Go ahead. I measure the progress of a community by the degree of progress which women have achieved. Jai Bhim, Jai Bharat. A warm good morning to all of you, Reverend Professor Gyantosh Kumar Jha, our guest speaker, Dr. Abhinaya Ramesh Kambal, and Professor Narendra Kumar, our convener, Mr. Ajit Kumar Sir, and all the members present over here. Welcome to you all. I, Adhishri, on behalf of Ambedkar Study Circle of Atma Ram Sanatan Dharm College, warmly welcome all of you on the 130th birth anniversary of Baba Saheb Ambedkar to discuss and cultivate the ideas of Baba Saheb and more extensively, the Ambedkarite perspective on women's emancipation. Cultivation of mind should be the ultimate aim of human existence. This statement of B.R. Ambedkar is the crux of the society. From so many years, ideas of Ambedkar's were neglected and somehow he was confined only to the constitution. But now, after so many years, scholars started agreeing to the fact that Ambedkar had already talked about situations which our society is facing these days. He is one of the most relevant intellectuals today. He not only drafted the constitution, but also wrote about the state reorganization, discrimination, women's emancipation, education, and so on. He was the reason for India's becoming the world's largest democracy. We at Ambedkar Study Circle try to study and analyze these ideas of Baba Saheb Ambedkar. Ambedkar Study Circle also serves as a platform for those students who want to study and learn something different. We also endeavor to create logical sense in the student so that he can critically observe any issue. For this, we use sessions we choose any or historical topic related to Baba Saheb and discuss about it. Currently, we have 65 members in our society. But as we are aware about the current pandemic, we still constantly conduct meets and webinars to reflect upon the ideas of Ambedkar. The theme for discussion today would be women's emancipation from Ambedkarite perspective. I would now request Ajit Kumar sir to kindly address the gathering. Over to you, sir.
जय भीम साथियों, आज इस 130वीं जन्म शताब्दी के अवसर पर हम लोग मिल रहे हैं। हमारे बीच दो विद्वान बंधु हमारे समक्ष हैं, प्रोफेसर नरेंद्र कुमार, डॉक्टर अभिनय रमेश कामले मैम और प्रोफेसर ज्ञानतोष कुमार झा हमारे प्रिंसिपल सर। मैं उन तीनों लोगों का बहुत ही स्वागत करता हूं। और जो अंबेडकर स्टडी सर्कल हमारे यहाँ और जो चल रहा है और इसकी स्थापना के लिए हमारे अभी जो करंट प्रिंसिपल हैं, इन्होंने ही अंबेडकर स्टडी सर्कल की स्थापना की थी और तब से अब तक जो है निरंतर कई गतिविधियों को अपने साथ जो है करने का प्रयास कर रही है। पिछले एक साल में हमने बहुत सारे विषयों पर और बहुत सारे महानायकों और महापुरुषों के विचार और दर्शन को हमने साझा किया है स्टूडेंट के साथ, एक्सपर्ट्स को बुलाकर। और अभी पिछले ही माह में हमने जो एक अंबेडकर की आत्मकथा है, वेटिंग फॉर ए वीज़ा, पहले स्टूडेंट्स को वो पढ़ने दिया गया और फिर जो है उस पर एक इंट्रा कॉलेज कंपटीशन करवाया गया स्टूडेंट्स के बीच में। तो इस तरीके से अंबेडकर स्टडी सर्कल अंबेडकर स्टडी सर्कल की गतिविधियां जो है निरंतर होती रही हैं इस लॉकडाउन में भी। और ये सब मैं अकेला या जो दो मेंबर टीचर मेंबर हैं, ज्योत्सना भोला मैम और मैं, ये सिर्फ हमारे परिश्रम से नहीं बल्कि स्टूडेंट जो है उन्होंने इनिशिएटिव लिया है। जो ऑफिस बियरर हैं, अंशुल रिफत जो प्रेसिडेंट हैं, सुधांशु शेखर जो वाइस प्रेसिडेंट हैं, तारिणी भसीन जो जनरल सेक्रेटरी हैं, अमन वर्मा जो ज्वाइंट सेक्रेटरी हैं, कार्तिकेय बंसल, आदिश्री वाजपेयी और देवांश चुग जो और दूसरी तरह के चीज़ों को देखते हैं, सोशल मीडिया, पोस्टर मेकिंग, कंटेंट राइटिंग, तो इन सब के साझा जो है प्रयास से अम्बेडकर स्टडी सर्किल अपने इस कारवां को आगे बढ़ाने में कामयाब हो रहा है और इनका प्रयास जो है वो आपको दिखता भी है और दूसरे जो सोसाइटीज़ हैं वो लोग भी अप्रिशिएट करते हैं। तो हमारा निरंतर प्रयास रहता है कि बच्चों को जो है इसमें इन्वॉल्व करके एक्टिविटी कराई जाए। तो इसी के साथ मैं अपनी जो है वाणी को यहीं विराम देना चाहूँगा और क्योंकि हमारे समक्ष जो हैं 2 बुद्धिजीवी हैं, तो उनको सुनना ज़्यादा पसंद करूँगा। बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद। जय भीम, जय भारत।
Thank you so much, sir. I would now request our principal, Sir Dr. Kyantosh Kumar Jha, to deliver the welcome address with his enlightening words.
Thank you, Honorable Professor Narendra Kumar ji, Honorable Dr. Abhinaya Ramesh Kamble ji, both the speakers of this program, Sri Ajit Kumar, convener of Ambedkar Study Circle, dear colleagues and my dear students. On behalf of Atmaram Sanatan Dharma College, it's a proud privilege and honor for me to welcome our guests and all the participants in this program, in this webinar. Topic: Women's Emancipation, Ambedkarite Perspective. I want to congratulate everybody who are present here, that our Ambedkar Study Circle of our college is doing a fabulous job in the leadership of Sri Ajit Kumar. From last year, we have started an online magazine, Blue Sky, and I think this year also we are going to release that magazine. I'm grateful to Professor Narendra Kumar and Dr. Kamble for giving their valuable time to deliver their lecture on a very pertinent issue. In fact, Baba Sahab used to say regarding the rights of the oppressed class, regarding the equality in the society, regarding the education, regarding how people can organize and how people can agitate against any kind of discrimination. And Baba Sahab's contribution, immense contributions towards writing constitution to the nation, and he has not only written the constitution but shown the path to the society how to be equal, how society can be equal, and how equality can be prevailed in the society. So I'm very glad that there were many programs organized by Ambedkar Study Circle in the past, many talks, discussions, debates, discourse, and many students of our college are participating, and they have participated in the past also. And I think the जो भी बाबा साहब चाहते थे, सोचते थे, उनके विचारों को हम लोग इस तरह से आगे बढ़ा रहे हैं. इसी परिकल्पना से, with this idea, we have started Ambedkar Study Circle in the college, that students can study and can know about the thoughts, about the wisdom, about the philosophy of Baba Saheb Ambedkar. What was his thoughts? What were his thoughts, his philosophy and thinking? So youth, at least youth of the country, should know about his literature, about his thoughts, about his views, so that society can progress in light of his education, in light of his ideas, and in light of his path shown by him. So once again, I express my gratitude to both the speakers, and I congratulate Sri Ajit Kumar and his team for organizing this webinar and releasing the blue sky today. Thank you so much. Over to Ajit.
Thank you, sir. It is highly motivating for all of us because of your constant support and encouragement, which has been a major factor for the growth of our society. Thank you so much. Moving forward to the magazine launch. Last year, we took initiative to launch the first edition of our bilingual magazine, The Blue Sky, on 14th April 2020. The magazine was inclusive of the diversifying thoughts and understanding of Ambedkar and other valuable ideas of the described themes in forms of article, write-ups, and poems. After receiving a very constructive and forward-looking response from the audience, this year we launched the second edition of our e-magazine, The Blue Sky. I would now request Karthik to take and launch the magazine. You can turn on your mic.
Yes, thank you, Adishri. I will be sharing my screen. I hope my screen is now visible to everyone.
Yes, Kartikeya.
So with this, I ask our principal sir to please grant me permission to launch this magazine on his behalf.
Yeah, permission granted.
Thanks a lot, sir. So here we go. So the second edition of our magazine, The Blue Sky, a bilingual magazine. We thank our patron, our principal, Dr. Gyanitesh Kumar Jha sir, for their constant guidance, and the convener, Ajit sir. So with this, I would like to give you a brief intro about the magazine, about the different articles and all we have in the magazine. So here it is the editorial.
No, but we cannot see. We are not able to see.
Okay, sir, I will try again.
Karthik, what is it? Is it a PDF or what? Or now
Yes,
it's
sir,
visible?
it's PDF only, sir.
Yeah, now it's visible.
Okay, sir. Thank you. I hope, sir, everyone can see it now.
Yes, visible now.
Okay, sir. So, with this, that's a cover page. We would like to thank our patron, Dr. Gyanitesh Kumar Jha, sir, our principal, for his guidance, and our convener, Ajit, sir. Thanks a lot, sir. I would quickly give you a brief about the magazine, different articles and all we have compiled and presented in a form. So here it is the editorial by Ajit, sir, where he has mentioned his full journey and the various aspects this magazine is covering. So here it's the contents. We have got a good response of articles both in Hindi as well as in English. Students have of our society as well as the teachers have contributed greatly to this, and we have been successful in presenting this magazine. So let me quickly review some of the articles. First, it is the marginalized sections and COVID-19. This article has been given by Anshul, the president of a society, president of a study circle, in which he have mentioned about the realities that and the harsh conditions the marginalized sections of a society have to face during this pandemic. There it is. Then it's the article COVID-19 beginning or the end. So COVID-19 have hit us really hard in all sectors. In this, our working president Rifat has mentioned about the different sectors and the regions where the COVID-19 has hit. Okay. So moving forward, there it is. A complete change. This article has been written by Drishti Mishra. She is from first year BCom program, about the complete change that a society have to undergo during this COVID time. So let's quickly move on. There is the Corona crisis, article on Corona crisis by Tarini Basin. She is also a first year student. And then it's the experience with COVID. We have seen that there have been various harsh experiences with COVID, those people who have to suffer from this disease. So in this article, Hitesh Kumar has written about it. So here again, it is about the impacts of COVID-19 on marginalized groups. Mr. Anupam Rawat have given a good info about the different problems all the people have to face. So moving on, the impact of COVID crisis on women. We are all evident that on women the crisis have hit really hard. In this, Adishri Bajaj of first year have mentioned about it. Let's quickly move on. Here it is the impact of Corona crisis and the use of Ambedkar ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity. So in this article, Sai Vishwakarma have linked both the Corona crisis and Ambedkar ideas in a single article, and I've written beautifully about it. I like the religion that teaches liberty, equality, and fraternity that Baba Sahib used to say. So let's move on. Here it is about knowing Ambedkar. Different aspects about Ambedkar. It has been written by Tushar Gautam. On it's about Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Religion is for a man and not man for religion. That's quite great. And he has also given all the educational degrees, the awards, and the political parties Baba Sahib was affiliated with and have got. So very good by Hitesh Kumar. Okay, so moving on, it is an Ambedkar in modern times. The ideas of Ambedkar and the visions of Ambedkar that is in the modern times in today's scenario. It has been beautifully written down in the form of this article by Karthikeya Bansal, first year. That's me. Okay, so here it is. इसमें हमारे में आर्टिकल में हमारी एक खासियत है कि बाइलिंगुअल है. इसमें हर सब ने ही अपना इनपुट दिया है और दोनों ही भाषाओं में. तो ये हिंदी में एक कविता है, मेरे बाबा की मैं पोती. ये तो अब यूं बड़े बड़े नाम काम सुने हैं. काफी अच्छी तरीके से इसमें मेंशन किया है. पूरी कविता बाबा साहेब के लिए समर्पित आशिका के द्वारा. जल्दी से आगे बढ़ते हैं इसमें. ये है मेरे बाबा साहेब जो लिखा है आकाश ने. फिर है कोरोना वायरस एक महामारी. ये आर्टिकल लिखा है, एक कविता लिखी है, माफ करिएगा, कविता भी है जिसमें एक, और आर्टिकल ऊपर उन्होंने कुछ उसके कोरोना के बारे में भी लिखा है. ये लिखा है अमन वर्मा ने. इसके बाद है कोरोना. ये एक बहुत ही सुंदर कविता ये लिखी है हमारे डॉक्टर राजेश चंद आदर्श जी ने. तो इस समय देख सकते हैं जो कि एक असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर है हिंदी विभाग में हमारे आत्माराम सनातन धर्म कॉलेज में. इसमें इन्होंने काफी अच्छी तरीके से पूरे कोविड का स्थिति का वर्णन किया है एक बेहद ही सुंदर कविता के रूप में. इसके साथ हम आते हैं भारत में कोरोना वायरस के सामाजिक और आर्थिक प्रभाव. इसमें इसको लिखा है हमारे पूर्व अध्यक्ष अंबेडकर स्टडी सर्कल के रहमत जी ने। तो इसके साथ I would like to end my presentation. So now I would request Adishri to take over. That's all about the magazine.
Thank you, Karthikeyan.
Thanks a lot, sir. So I hand over to Adishri, please.
Thank you, Karthikeyan. It was beautifully presented. I would move forward with I welcome today two of our guest speakers, Dr. Abhinaya Ramesh Kambal and Professor Narendra Kumar. Dr. Ramesh Kambal has done MA from London and LLB from Government Law College, University of Mumbai. She was awarded the British Chevening Human Rights Fellowship by the British High Commission and has represented women of India in South Africa, Cape Town, in the World Court of Women Against War and for Peace, organized under the Programme of United Nations. Amongst her key publications, a few include Dalit Women, Vulnerabilities, Feminist Consciousness Economy, and Political Weekly.
Adishri, you switch off your videos.
In women's human rights issued by the Association for Rewriting Not Economic Complexity in Violence Against Women, published. Right, yes, sir.
Adishri, you switch off your video so that your voice will improve.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah. Professor Narendra Kumar, who has completed his master's and doctor's in political science from Jawaharlal Nehru University. He has been awarded the Indo-French Social Sciences Fellowship in 2011 and has also been awarded by the University Grants Commission Junior Research Fellowship. To cite a few, his books and publication include Politics and Religion in India, published in 2020, Dr. Ambedkar and Democracy, published in 2018, B.R. Ambedkar, Perspective in Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policies, published in 2008, Dalit Leadership in Panchayat, a comparative study of 4 states, published in 2006, and so much more. We are deeply honored to have you amongst us, sir and ma'am. I would now request and invite Dr. Abhinaya Ramesh Kambal to kindly chair this the session forward. Welcome, ma'am.
Adishri, Professor Narendra Kumar will chair and he will conduct session. Okay.
Right. Okay, sir. So
kindly make this correction.
Okay.
Professor Narendra Kumar, sir.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me here, Professor Jha, Dr. Ajit Kumar, and the team members of Ambedkar Study Circle, and colleagues and friends. This is the day that we celebrate as Ambedkar's birthday, and as you see that each year the following of Ambedkar and the celebrations for Ambedkar is increasing. And I recall that when we were students, at that time there was someone who used to visit for a longer time in India from US, and she made a comment that each time I come to India, because she has been visiting since 1950s or so. So she said that each time I come to India, then I find that there are more followers of Ambedkar, more programs being organized by people on Ambedkar. may not be by the government as such, but by the common masses. But if you look at in the last 20 years or so, then we see that there is not only the governments which are organizing events to commemorate this event, but also the people in the common streets, common masses, they are also continuously engaged in these celebrations. So I think world over, if you see that you won't find a personality after so many years being being celebrated in this manner. So I think if even the greatest of the great people which we have been knowing world over, I don't think that the way Ambedkar Jayanti celebration is done in different parts of the world, in India in particular, this kind of celebration is done for any of the person who has been living in this planet. So that whole story tells us that the day by day, this person is becoming more and more significant. Not only he's becoming significant due to let's say allegiance to the faith in him, but due to the ideas that he produced, due to the works he has done during his lifetime. And during his lifetime, you see that he has done a lot of work and a lot of let's say writings, the kind of writings he has done, that those writings are making him live every day in our lives. So in this regard, I congratulate and also say that this day we all need to commemorate as a day of celebration, and not only celebration just for the sake of celebration, but if we don't actually celebrate the ideas, Dr. Ambedkar himself said that I like human beings, ideas are also mortal. If you don't actually flourish those ideas, you don't think about those ideas which need to be thought about, then those ideas also become mortal, like the human beings. So this way, I think the ideas of Ambedkar and are becoming much more relevant each and every day. With this small introduction, the topic for today's discussion we have kept is relevance of Dr. Ambedkar and his idea about women's emancipation. So in this regard, first of all, I would request our speaker. I have been asked to chair this session. I'll make some comments afterwards, after the presentation by Dr. Abhinaya Ramesh Kamble. Now I would request her to kindly make her presentation. Thank you.
Ma'am, your mic is muted.
Hello, everybody, and good evening. Jai Bhim to all of you on the occasion of the 14th April birth day of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Friends, I'm very happy to share some of my views and perceptions as far as the women's emancipation of India is concerned. And I'm very happy that we have a very august gathering over here. I see some of my friends and also the enlightened folks, I would say here, those who have organized this talk, right? Now, I'm very happy to say that some of the comments which I'm going to make, which are articulated very recently, at the same time, I also would like to take cue from a number of thinkers and also the contributors for analyzing, understanding, and articulating Ambedkarian thought in modern setup. The The first very prominent, which I must say, that Ambedkarite perspective, and it begins with his methodology of knowledge production. When we say his methodology of knowledge production is basically aimed at social transformation, okay, in general. And his methodology would not be the way we have in India, that someone says, that sort of a taken for granted attitude or perception about articulating something and producing knowledge because that someone says, but he's outrightly followed the Western substantiation oriented articulation as far as knowledge production is concerned. And with that very prominent, let us say, perception which he got trained and also received from the Western modernity, which has contributed, and also the contemporary or the historical, let us say, knowledge which was produced and articulated by Buddha, Charvaka, Mahatma Phule, and all the series of people, those who have contributed for the emancipation of human beings. Okay, so that is the center point of my argument. With this, I would say that I would like to move forward, that the substantiation of argument was so powerful that there were no loose ends in his all arguments. And that is very, very important for any knowledge production. That you don't have to say something just because you felt, but you need to have the substantiation for that argument from the historicity, from number of sources which are important. And that makes me to get attracted towards his writing, that what exactly he tried to say and convey out of his writing. Now, no sentence, not a single sentence, I would say, that he said for the sake of. So every sentence, is articulation and its message was very much important. And as I said in the beginning, the methodology of social transformation. I'm getting reminded of Albert Camus when he received his award in 1940s before his death, a Nobel Award for his literary writings, where he mentioned that every act, whether it is academia, whether it is artist, or for that matter, anybody, the creative art or also the academic writings needs to have a social transformation, or emancipation of human being. Unfortunately, I must mention here that Indian traditions of social transformation was Indian tradition of knowledge production never had, or most of the time they did not have this kind of a change or social transformation. And that made Ambedkar to shift himself from the existing traditions. As I told you, the traditions which were very important for him to understand and also relate. Apart from that, the references which I have mentioned about Buddha, Charvaka, Mahatma Phule, where you will find that all of them, they don't make argument for the sake of, but the argument is loaded with substantiation. Okay, so this is my general, let us say, understanding as far as his all writings are concerned in all the volumes. Again, you will find that there is also one more lacuna in knowledge production systems of our side of the world, is that while producing the knowledge, you don't have conscious, thinking that you are not othering another one. Now, these othering processes are very much clearly visible for last, let us say, 70 years in our country. You see the academia, while saying something, they don't take care that when you make a statement, you also damage another one. And that is a horrible othering at this particular juncture. When world has become globalized, I believe in the globalization from below and not from above. I believe that all of you are well aware about the drawbacks and the problematic of the globalization from above. But I believe that the globalization from below takes care of all humanitarian emancipatory practices of knowledge production. And I am with it. So they don't go for the othering, but if you see consistently in case of Indian knowledge production, there are a number of sentences which are added without thinking how it will damage the other. And that is how we have produced the knowledge. Even though people have gone abroad, still they have that kind of othering because they have never checked, as I say quite often, that self-questioning is completely absent and lacking in our everyday routine life, as well as a specific attempt of creation of knowledge production. Another thing which I would like to say, and I'm not going for the details about Ambedkarian thought, which all of you are, let us say, last 20 years, Baba Sahib has become so relevant that each and everybody knows his very specific and prominent articulations, which are basically for the social transformation. But I will also add into it, since I am a person from political science, that he's the one who started Grote's idea of constitutional morality. Now, he insisted that it is not possible in a country one who never had the democratic setup or the ideology. So it is very crucial for us to have the constitutional morality, though it is not there. And there are a number of statements which he has said, which each one of us are well aware that we are entering into a very egalitarian perception of the society, but innately our society is not egalitarian or believes in differences and maintaining those differences. Okay. So this constitutional morality is a very, very prominent structure or ideology which he gives in all his volumes as a document which he has produced for and aimed at change in the society. But at the same time, this constitutional morality, which he tries to emphasize in his writings, for that though we are entering into a democratic setup, but do we really have democratic values, because our entire social, economic, political ethos is based on uh, discriminatory practices, and we have that kind of secluded othering discriminatory practices, and some of those who are privileged because of those practices, they have considered themselves that those practices are very valuable because they are privileged because of those secluding, or I would say that discriminatory, differing, differentiating practices. Okay, so constitutional morality is a very, very important concept, which I quite often say that the American Constitution, which believes in pursuit of happiness and tranquility, Baba Sahib completely followed that kind of a dictum in his constitution making, and which is very, very important. And we all are benefited out of it. Okay. Moving towards the women's emancipation in general. Now, I believe and I strongly say that women's emancipation in India is completely acquired by the upper caste and upper class women. Especially, I have a relevance and also the context of Hindu Code Bill. Now, everybody knows that how the Dayabhaga and Mitakshara, these are the two schools of Hindu law, which has different connotations related to women and the property rights. It is Baba Sahib one who tried to bring those things in a very democratic perception, that democratizing the Hindu law, and especially Dayabhaga and Mitakshara reforms, which he included: right to divorce, equal rights for women to inherit the property from father's property, from husband's property, and also a stridhan. Okay, at the same time, which is very, very important, to abolish inhuman practice of polygamy. So abolition of polygamy is a very important, and I would say a very prominent contribution, which even today that other countries are also following, that how uh, it is very crucial to understand Ambedkarian thought on those accounts. Then the institution of religion has taken over the lives of people, and more so in case of women. In that connection, it becomes very, very crucial for us to understand abolition of polygamy. Friends, I would say that there are a number of labor laws or the concept of social justice which he carried for, which he had a very emphasis in his writing, that a weaker section or a weaker person, socially, economically, gender-wise, or other and many other forms, you will find that he tried to make sense that how it is crucial to have that perception of social justice, that even if they commit error, the error committed by them, in a very simplistic manner, I'm telling you, that even if the error committed by them, the error is not, let us say, intentional, what we call in our law, mens rea, that is guilty mind. It happens inadvertently, it happens without their knowledge, and if at all it happens, the weaknesses which they have received is basically the discriminatory practices which society has. Okay, so here you will find that a very important perception he has offered to us, that uh, a person, one who is from weaker section, he himself is outrightly not responsible, but at the same, but he is basically an outcome of such practices which has confined him to commit error inadvertently. And I think I value this particular perception of Ambedkarian ideology very, very strong. Okay. Uh, Now, if you see now let me just, with this very important perception which he had, I would like to link the contemporary world, because that's very crucial for me, and also to convey to some of the students are there. So I feel it is very important for me to talk about some of the social theory or feminist theory articulations. As I said, that women's emancipation for the upper caste and upper class is completely, I would say, acquired or achieved by number of things. One is that all laws, whether they are labor laws or laws like Sexual Harassment Act and all, they are basically, if it is about the public domain and public, let us say, location, and if a woman is working in the government settings, it is possible for them to invoke those laws. Why? Because they are working. But what about the 80% unorganized sector, which is there for Dalit, Adivasi, and OBC? Do they have accessibility? Do they know, or are they aware about it, that they do have some of the laws? A very contradictory thing, which I must say, that a law which was passed under the Vishakha judgment, that is the Sexual Harassment Act or law, which is basically for the redressal. And that law is basically taken from the case of Gauri Devi. But what happens to that? Similar case about the Mathura rape. Whether Mathura received, and these contradictions, which is very problematic in this particular world of ours. And there is one perception that there is incommensurability. I would like to necessarily use this context of incommensurability is very important, because if you see from 1970 onwards, all women's studies, those who have came out with the articulations on the issues about women, were primarily for and about and in context of the women, those who are already privileged and getting more privileged because of the study circles under the women's studies, which have taken care of these women. So that created a very massive disparity between the women of the privileged section and also underprivileged section. And they consistently say that there is incommensurability as far as the context of the women, those who are from the privileged and underprivileged, are concerned. There are also lies which are going on for ages, that Dalit, Adivasi, and OBC women, they don't have the clutches of their husband the way upper caste and upper class women. Now, few, I would say, minuscule minority is much more influencing the entire structure. And till 2000, I would say the world was saying, or the world was knowing or having the knowledge about the women's problems in India from the point of view of the privileged section of India. And that was a big drawback which was created by the established section, Women's Studies Academia. I would say that Dr. Ambedkar is basically, I mean, I would not say used, but the relevance of his articulations, his intellectual capacities for the empowerment of women are basically made these women as beneficiaries of Ambedkarian thought. But in return to that, how many of them have taken a cause of the women, those who are from the deprived section? The answer is big no. Okay. So I would say that these beneficiaries of Ambedkarian empowerment of all upper caste and class women, especially those who work in organized sector, receive all, let us say, benefits, but they did not feel that they did have to do something for. You take the example of Karlanji case. You take the example of Nirbhaya case. And you also take the articulations about the Nirbhaya. Now, while the organizers asked me to talk about women's emancipation, I just went through and I realized that number of context about the Hathras case are from the news. Okay, now there was no attempt, or there is no attempt last 2020 to 2021 till this point that anybody from the upper caste, just one or two, like Smita Patil has mentioned about the Hathras case in a very detailed manner. But you will find that number of people, those who are writing on a case of the Western world, as Sarah and Nirbhaya in 2021. So you can imagine for them, Hathras case is not in the context for analysis. It cannot be bring into the analytical understanding, but Hathras case makes them to read again or reread about Nirbhaya case. Okay, so this is a saddening part of our knowledge production, friends. Okay, uh, 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 moving forward, I would like to say that whatever work which was done on the Dalit women or Adivasi women or OBC women, there is one very prominent context and concept in feminism as they are considered to be that they are also the victim. And now that has been called as Dalit, Adivasi and OBC women are just add-on category. Now this add-on category was also, you will find in Verma report. When I studied Verma report immediately after the publication of Verma, but they did not publish the entire report online. So I received 10 points where nowhere there is mention about the structural and systemic violence against Dalit women. Okay. And so I feel that we are continuing last 70 years, the same bias that why should we worry and considering Dalit, Adivasi, and OBCs of this country as liability and not a responsibility, especially those who are working on women's studies or analyzing something like, that how one should go for articulating women's issues in this country. I also would like to take care of the sisterhood. Okay. Now, entire world is influenced with the concept of sisterhood that somewhere, as I said about incommensurability, but you will find that there are also a number of attempts made by some of the people that they need to go for the sisterhood. And I do hear about in a very practical sense about the sisterhood from 1990 onwards. Has it entered in our country, friends? Again, I would say there is a big no for this sisterhood. On the contrary, keeping, maintaining, and articulating difference day by day has become a forte. I'm, I'm using it in a very negative sense, a forte of the upper caste feminists. Now, is it not responsibility that they received their minuscule minority, population, their demography, because of the morchas and the voice which was voiced out with the help of the lower caste, or let us say Dalita Adivasi women. But as they received their all, let us say, articulations about their system or about their location, they forgot to talk or they forgot to take care of the issues. I came across Flavia Agnes's interview about women's law, and very rarely she is contextualizing Hathras case. The point which I'm trying to tell you that what is the violence which we have in this society. I would say and take a cue from Kajju that he said that there is a consistent genocide which is going on in this country for ages. I would say it is for the 2,500 years. It is day-to-day happening. It is everyday physical and also torturing physicality of Dalit community, since they are in minority, since they are isolated in the villages. At the same time, they are basically considered to be the people, those who will not raise the voice. And this genocide which is there, but I would like to say and take it further what Karju has said, that this genocide nowadays is also due to the young generation of Dalit communities academia, and also some of the status quoist Dalits, those who did some status quoist behavior for their individual, let us say, perception and individual benefits of the positions, and they made other resistance to stop, because the articulations which are coming, I can just refer you the example of day before yesterday, there was a young person, one who was presenting on Dalit women and sexual violence. Now, I would like to say very squarely here that she, while talking about the issues, though she was talking under the banner of Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung, but she said the very prominent leaders, and she started and began with Rosa Luxemburg and then Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Now, this is a very, very enslaving new generation which is taking a backseat and not fighting it out. On the contrary, not saying anything, critiquing, and also joining the bandwagon of their supervisors or of their teachers, those who make them, and that is a big issue. And I would also say that are they not aware about Paulo Freire's critical pedagogy or critical oppressed pedagogy? Are they not aware about it? How long they will become the forerunners of the upper caste ideology? I would say that I always say about the Brahminical surveillance, but I would say now they are entering into the international dominant surveillance, and this surveillance is more problematic because Western world did not have this position of surveilling someone, but if someone says something good, take him because he is going to save the humanity. Whereas our country's people, whether from the upper caste or from the lower caste academia, they go there and they carry these humiliating, enslaving mentality, which Westerners are not aware, but they are making it, and that is very, very sad part of it. Another aspect which I would like to say that self-critiquing is very, very crucial, but here I'm critiquing the elite class of the Dalit community, and I'm not critiquing the people, those who are deprived of number of things. I would say that all meta-narratives, that is Marxist ideology, Marx never critiqued working class. Baba Sahib never critiqued the deprived section, but the last 30 years, I see very squarely that people from Dalit community schooled in the upper caste school system and the knowledge production, they first critique their own people and folks, those who are unaware about what is knowledge and for what purpose knowledge is being produced. And that is a very problematic situation at the moment, I must mention here. Another, I would say that there is a continuum of violence against women, but this violence is always underestimated. The caste violence always underestimated when it comes to the class. And inequalities, those who don't have the class equation in their articulation, I'm talking about the state as a apparatus, they try to hide the inequalities which are produced, and also the intelligentsia. I know you know that I'm hinting at, that the intelligentsia will conveniently say that it's not only the caste, but it is also a class, and there is another damage for last 70 years. Third very important point I would say that whether it is pandemic or any global, let us say, economic turmoil, who is at the receiving end? The receiving end is always one who is basically deprived of. And who are they? They are Dalit, Adivasi, and OBCs. Okay. So this cascading impact of every catastrophe is basically on Dalit community, and it creates further divisions of inequalities. And these further divisions of inequalities are not possible to cure at that particular juncture. Another aspect I would say that there is a month history program, Dalit history program or project which is there in Germany. I found that the knowledge and the historicity which has been produced over there about Sokhamera is outrightly wrong. What are these guys doing there? Are they having a blindfolded perception about what historicity has been produced in that history month, and no one wants to take care of it? Okay, I happened to appear for that, and I saw the recording, and I came to know that, oh my God, some more damages are getting on the in this world. uh, so another aspect I would say that my take on Me Too movement is that Me Too movement was basically about the sexual violence, and also about the women, those who came across their prominent or dominant, let us say, bosses, sometimes academia or sometimes something else. But here I would say that, is it not that Me Too was there for all the deprived sections? Because anything can be said, if not about the sexual violence, but sexual violence to Dalit women and all other women, those who are not from the privileged section, have always received this Me Too. But in modern setup, which happens to the upper caste and upper class, that becomes very prominent, but which is going on for ages, is not the responsibility of the academia from the upper caste. uh, I have developed one very important model of vulnerability, that how what damages knowledge production has created on number of accounts. Okay, there are 5 different sections of the vulnerability of women from Dalit community. One is that the knowledge I have in my mind is Sharmila Rege. Though after her death, everybody was trying to say that how Sharmila Rege was a context of knowledge production. But I still remember that her article in 2002 in EPW, which everybody should read, about the popular culture Lavani and Povada, where she tries to gather the information from a very secondary and third grade sources, that is Andharatla Lavanya. And in that, fortunately or unfortunately for her, that I came across that book from my college, and I realized that there are a number of atrocious comments on the upper caste women and the patriarchy which the Pune main and the Pune, let us say, ideology had. But she did not think about those, but she has given paras and paras about the comments of the men from the upper caste, what they said about women. Okay, so new generation, those who are over here, should take care of this kind of context, which makes the personality of the people, those who are from the deprived section. Uh, I would say that while talking about this issue of this vulnerability model, all the sections, NGO, and the most prominently, I would say, what happened and what context the Chalo Nagpur 2017 in Nagpur happened, how Dalit women were made more vulnerable. It's not only the vulnerability about the deprived sections, poor women, those who don't have accessibility of power and authority, but the women, those who were organizers, were also made the most vulnerable. And I am the person, one who was consistently fighting for these utterances of upper caste, so-called communist, or I would say those who believe in the egalitarianism, what exactly the idea they have about the organizers, Dalit women, and also the common Dalit women. A complete patron-client relationship I could observe there in their utterances, which I still have it with me if you want to have for the substantiation of my this argument. Okay. Uh, so I would say that uh, uh, here the damages which are going on in this country, and Dalit women, those who are entering into the very so-called modern spaces, if they have become the client of these modern spaces stalwarts, so-called intellectuals, I feel that Ambedkarian thought cannot proceed further. Okay, Ambedkar himself never had this thing in his mind, and an upright person, one who had to resign from the ministership. He did not care for that, though he also had a very poor, let us say, background as far as his childhood. But nowadays, you will find there is exodus, I would say. I make a comment in a very direct manner, the exodus of Dalit elite class, which is trying to become status quoist and also taking advantages at the cost of their poor Dalit brethren, and that has become a big problematic at this juncture. I would like to come to the concluding remarks. I'm also expecting, friends, number of questions and queries from you because I'm waiting for that, and especially from the young generations. Okay. So here, another damage which is happening, it's not a damage. I do believe in the difference. The theory of difference is a very important center point of my articulations all along. But I have realized that under this theory of difference, the queer is taking prime position. And now you also have another category called Dalit queer. Okay. Now, friends, what happens to the everyday 10 rape cases of Dalit women which are by the upper caste, let us say, uh, 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 people, those are the hooligans, and who is going to take care if the young generation is shifting themselves because they have or they see some sort of benefits out of these, let us say, new categories. Okay, and here, uh, possibility of the having some egalitarianism which Baba Sahib has pursued, or nowadays we talk about Amartya Sen and also John Rawls, or let us say Marxian ideology, to bring some sort of egalitarianism in the society. uh, we always have a very problematic concept which I have developed last 6 months. That is, there is a massive caste nepotism in the society, and this massive caste nepotism. Some people, if you join any bank, the entire bank will become from that. All the people will be from that particular community. Those are the bankers. So this caste nepotism is a sickness or an ailment which does not have, let us say, remedy. And people from the other caste, those who are underprivileged, they follow such kind of obnoxious patterns of behavior of caste nepotism in their articulations, which Baba Sahib did not do. Okay, and so uh, the society lacks complete self-questioning as far as the I'm getting reminded of the Socratic principle that unexamined life is not worth living. I think Baba Sahib consistently had this kind of uh, examining what he did, what he wanted, what he was, and what he wanted to do for the people. And I think this particular principle has created a very important context in his life, and every Ambedkarite should take it further and forward. So what I feel that what happens because of all these ruptures which are going on last 20 years in academia or in elite class of the upper caste, what they do, how they create the clientele from the lower caste, uh, could be for the politics, could be for the domination, could be for number of reasons. But you will find that the principle of pluriversal, that is plural, I'm not talking about the universal, but plural universe which we are trying to locate, is it really possible? Okay. And I have in my mind that a young generation should read Paulo Freire's critical pedagogy, oppressed pedagogy, where he tries to train the people that how it is important to have a criticism which begins with self. Okay. And so the epistemology and the epistemic violence which these people, along with the elite class of the status quoist pattern oriented elite class of the Dalit community, which has created a number of errors. You see the books which are coming up is nothing but what was there in 1970. I have Daya Pawar in my mind, and also Suraj Engre, that you write, and also Urmila Pawar, you write which is appealing and appeasing, and you don't go for the massive criticism of the culprit community or the inflictor community and the section of the society, but you try to comment and critique about those who are basically the victim. Okay. With these friends, I would like to say that there is an epistemic violence, there is also ontological violence, which is going on in this country for last 70 years. And I don't find the reflections of Baba said, though you have few people, those who have started writing about those lines, but here you will find the elite class of this society is undermining Ambedkarian thought, which is rational, upright, and for social transformation and emancipation on this side of the earth. Thank you very much, and Jai Bhim once again.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abhinya. It was really a thought-provoking presentation, wherein you are critiquing not only those who victimize, but also those among the victims who have become privileged section in some senses. So I think, but I don't know whether Ajit, should I make my presentation first and before asking the participants to put some questions to Dr. Abhinya?
No. Sir, you make and then question and we take
okay.
it.
Oh, I see. Okay. 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 Fine. See, when I thought of making presentation, then because Dr. Ajit has talked to me that saying that you will basically chair the session. So I really did not make a formal presentation, but I'll make some remarks on Dr. Ambedkar's idea of women's emancipation. If you look at Ambedkar's idea about emancipation of women, then I think from the very beginning, when you look at his 1919, although South Bureau Committee did not have much reflection about this, but in 1928, when he's talking or he's presenting himself before the Simon Commission, there I think Dr. Ambedkar is very categorically asking the Britishers that we need to go for the universal adult franchise. And when he is asking for the universal adult franchise or advocating for that, that means that he did not have this in mind, whether the women should be given or not. He was very clear that the women folks should also be given equal rights so far as the right to vote is concerned. That's why he was talking about the universal adult franchise. And later on, when he becomes particularly the member in the Viceroy's Executive Council, therein he again brings in the idea of let's say some kind of feminist perspective or the emancipation of women, and he proposed here that there should be equal pay for equal work irrespective of gender, and he framed many laws for the women labor in India, and some of the laws which he framed during those times, way back in 1940s or so, the Mines Maternity Benefit Act 1941, Women Labor Welfare Fund, Women and Child Labor Protection Act, Maternity Benefit for Women Labor, which was known as Maternity Benefit Act 1961. Then restoration of ban on employment of women on underground work in the coal mines. So these were some of the aspects wherein Dr. Ambedkar actually formally started intervention regarding women's emancipation. And this women's emancipation was not confined to the marginalized sections women, but it was for whole womankind of this country in particular. So for the benefit of workers of women, he even went on for Employee State Insurance Act 1948, and not only that, the medical care, medical leave, and compensation for injuries that happened during the work. So some of these benefits which are enjoyed by or which have been given to the women during all these years, let's say in the last 70 years or so, and the way these have been enacted by the regimes in power, there can be a lot of criticism of the way these have been implemented. But when it comes to, let's say, Hindu Code Bill, as you know, has been one of the major intervention of Dr. Ambedkar so far as women's emancipation is concerned. And if I remember correctly, the draft itself, which he produced for this Hindu Code Bill, it is in 109 pages. And you see that in those 109 pages, these 109 pages are something which are actually, let's say, a second constitution in one sense for the women folk, because he could understand and that in the Constitution of India, despite his various kinds of efforts, much could not be done for the women. And that's where probably he's trying to make a kind of to fill up that gap which was left in the Constituent Assembly. And herein he brings in the idea of Hindu Code Bill. And the Hindu Code Bill actually is also not implemented by the regime in power, and we know very well that what happened to that bill, and everybody knows that he had to resign. I would like to actually have your attention to some of the kind of in fact the cartoons which were coming during those days regarding the Hindu Code Bill. And you will be surprised to know this also, that during those times, it was not only the male members of the caste Hindu communities who were agitating against Dr. Ambedkar, that why he was intervening or interfering in the affairs of the community. Rather, women themselves, they were also agitating, and there was a massive protest which was done in front of India Gate by the women themselves, that this law should not be in fact implemented or should not be taken for discussion. And if you look at the kind of actually those cartoons which were produced, then some of the cartoons, like one cartoon is there which is talking about equal rights for women, and on one side there is Dr. Ambedkar, and on another side there is a women, and on the other side there is a person who is a Purohit in his the traditional attire, and he is so much agitated, and he is trying to confront them for this. And then another actually this cartoon of those times was wherein there is the same kind of person, the Purohit, or who is considered to be let's say custodian of the rights of the women. He is putting his one of his leg on the women who is lying down, and Dr. Ambedkar is standing there, and he is having a Hindu Code Bill in his hand. So these kind of cartoons which were appearing during those times. Then again, some of the cartoons like have been wherein Dr. Ambedkar is trying to rescue the women from the clutches of those pandas. And another important have been that Dr. Ambedkar is going with a small girl, and then on the other side there is someone with a kind of with some sword kind of thing. He is there and he is he would be hitting as he passes Dr. Ambedkar and the girl passes through. So some of these actually, what these kinds of cartoons actually tell us is that what Dr. Ambedkar was trying to do through the Hindu Code Bill was something which agitated the minds of the people. And interestingly, some of the participant has asked that why Dr. Ambedkar did not burn Quran, and why did he burn? That means he's referring that why did he burn the Manusmriti? And actually, if you look at this, why actually we being educated, we have got education from our former institutions, but if we are questioning in this way, then we that means we are not trying to understand. Even after 70 years of so-called independence, we are not in a position to accept the criticism of something which is very, very inhuman. And those inhuman practices were questioned by Dr. Ambedkar during those times. And when actually it was passed by Nehru government in 1950, 55, 56 under piecemeal legislations. And in response to that, actually there was some women of those times who was MP in during those times. She actually wrote that symbolism won over substance, because Dr. Ambedkar, when he was articulating for the rights of the women in the Hindu Code Bill, those actually the teeth which were given by the Hindu Code Bill, those were taken away by the legislations which were actually which were proposed and implemented in the later parts. So I think with these kind of movements and what has been happening over the years, I think Dr. Abhinay has already talked about that some of the majority of the caste Hindu women, why they are not actually trying to understand that what Dr. Ambedkar was talking about. Though one of the book that I came across by Sarmila Rege, Against the Madness of the Manu, I think there she is making, and one of her lecture I attended, there she was making a case wherein she was saying that Indian feminists need to reclaim Ambedkar because he was the one who was talking about emancipation of the women. There can be criticisms of different kinds, but at the same time, I think the writing which Dr. Abhinay Kamble is referring to in EPW, and here the second writing where she is talking about Against the Madness of the Manu, there I think we need to understand something in between which was which has happened. So and I'm actually not trying to defend anyone or not to criticize, but where there is a criticism, we should be going for that criticism. But when it comes to let's say also appreciation, there also I think we should be appreciating anybody who has taken some kind of inspiration from the writings of Ambedkar. There are many people who are these days taking some inspiration from the writings of the Ambedkar, and we also we can be critical of that also, because there are few who are even from the so-called right wing also, they are trying to appropriate Ambedkar these days. So how they are appropriating and what are the kind of concepts which are being appropriated, whether Dr. Ambedkar is being appropriated fully or being appropriated in let's say pieces, that there also we need to be very, very, I think, alert. And that's where I think Dr. Abhinaya's presentation has hinted to. And I think Dr. Abhinaya has very well articulated that the knowledge production in this country has not taken into consideration the social transformation issue. And that has been the major critique of, let's say, Dalit critique, or which we know as Dalit Bhojan critique. So this is the kind of critique which is being produced by the people coming from these sections of the society. And there are few others than the lineage of Buddha, Charvaka, and Dr. Ambedkar. Obviously, this is something which is this is the lineage which is talking about the transformation of the society as such. And othering and damage in contemporary India. This othering, obviously, when Buddha is talking about the othering, when Buddha is talking, then he is not talking, he does not take his argument to the othering, but he is taking everyone with him, but at the same time, the ideas which need to be questioned, he has been questioning those ideas, and that's why he's not bringing in the aspect of othering there. Whereas the many others, even now and before and in medieval period, let's say ancient period, we see examples of othering within the country. Constitutional morality well taken, patriarchy, contemporary world. I think this has been very, very articulative, and the kind of model actually Dr. Abhinaya Kamble is producing, that actually I think needs to be looked into, because she does not critique only those who are coming from the, let's say, caste Hindu background, or those who are so-called upper caste, but she is also the one who is trying to critique the community of scholars, or the people, elite people, so-called elite people who have by chance got emancipation due to the let's say efforts of Dr. Ambedkar. Then that self-questioning, I think that self-questioning is very, very critical, that needs to be taken care of, and that needs to be taken into consideration. And if that is where I think Dr. Ambedkar, Buddha, and why Buddha and Dr. Ambedkar are their ideas are actually same or similar, because they are the ones who have been self-critiquing also. If you look, just I'll give you just one example, that when Dr. Ambedkar is talking about the representation of the depressed classes, he starts with let's say separate electorates, but finally when he looks at that the separate electorates are not possible, then he reinvestigate, interrogates himself, and then redefines his ideas. And then he finally, when he's talking about reorganization of states, there he is talking multi-member constituencies. Instead of saying separate electorate, then he is talking for multi-member constituencies, so that other sections of the society also are convinced that there is a need for representation of each and every group and community of people. So I think with these words, I'll stop myself and request the audience if you have some questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. It was rather enlightening to hear you talk about that how, other than celebrating the day, what is more important is to celebrate the ideas of Ambedkar as ideas with power to bring about change. And how, ma'am, so many incidents explain that vulnerability of women is harder on lower caste and women, and how caste plays a major role in gender-based discrimination. Also, how self-questioning is the most critical thing to bring about change. Uh, how you also mentioned about how right wing also try to appropriate the ideas of Ambedkar in not fully but in pieces, and how we have to be alert about it. So it was a really enriching session, and I would request the participant to put in questions. We already have many, so I would address them. We have a question from Karthikeya Bansal. Sir, how, other than celebrating the day, what is more important is to celebrate the ideas of Ambedkar, because those are important to conduct a change in the society. Your views on this?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, actually, that's very much true. That instead of formally celebrating Ambedkar, then we celebrate the ideas of Ambedkar. Actually, that would be much more crucial than just garlanding Ambedkar, just talking about what he did. But rather, I think herein we need to think that how his ideas are emancipatory and how those ideas are so relevant even today, and what can be done about making those ideas practicable, and how those ideas can be let's say made for the transformation of the society. So other than celebrating just by celebrating the day that is today, even if we talk about his ideas on this day, then I think that will not be sufficient enough. Rather, what we should be doing is in the morning, actually, I happen to participate in one of the Maharishi Dayananda University functions, and therein the Vice Chancellor himself came out with the proposal wherein he said that fine, we should be commemorating this day, that is fine, and we'll come out with some kind of bust of Ambedkar in our campus, which is not there. But at the same time, that we should also be having lecture series on Ambedkar, and that to monthly lecture series or maybe fortnightly or so. So I was so impressed with this kind of idea that people are now just not thinking about just commemorating this day or commemorating Dr. Ambedkar just by garlanding him, rather by celebrating the ideas that he stood for. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have another question from Ajit Kumar, sir. Ma'am, you said the greatest beneficiaries were the upper caste women, and by current example, you explained it. In the current scenario, how Ambedkar ideas can be beneficial for the Dalit Bahujan women, and what needs to be done at the individual level to bring that power with other women. Do you think elitism within women harmed more, or is it something else?
I have a different opinion about this, such as if you see the context of these women, those who are the beneficiaries of all the, let us say, Ambedkarian comprehension regarding women's emancipation, if you see the patterns of behavior on their part, they think, as I said, that we have a caste, nepotism in this country. So they also have the gender caste nepotism in this country. And all the time they are, occupied with how to promote. Now, I also missed one very important point that last, let us say, 70 years, or let us say last 30 years, we are consistently promoting, and the promotion has become a very emphasized concept, that somebody's work which is not worth still we have to promote. And in this promoting processes, you will find that these beneficiaries have promoted their own kids and kins, and also their caste kids and kins from the later generations, whether they have the crux, whether they are really relevant, whether they have some articulations that is not taken seriously. And as a result, I would say that if Dalit women have to raise themselves, that first of all, I would say that Ambedkar raised himself all by himself. And that's a very important, rational, upright tradition which he set before us. And I think that they should not take care about that somebody should be a patron, one who will give them some sort of solace or some sort of status in the life, but they should basically do every effort to be on their own and fight out, because we always had to fight out all our issues in the village, or now also we fight out all our issues without anybody's support. And the responsibility from the beneficiaries is this, that they should also go beyond their confined, let us say, selfish interest, and take care of the other beings, those who are deprived, because major finances or major material world is captured by these beneficiaries. And I feel they have to do something for the lower caste women, and not damaging them further by maligning them in the articulations and in knowledge production, which has happened, and I have the evidence about it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
We have another question from Rifat. Ma'am, if wife dies, then the husband remarries easily without any interrogation. Whereas when husband dies, no one come forward to support her, and none is already to marry her. This kind of thinking is embedded in our society. I request you to enlighten us. How can we empower them and bring the wave of change in our society? Society starts assassinating her character if she tries to work to earn, to provide good living to her children.
Yeah, it's a very important question actually. And I really feel that it is very crucial for a young man, a man or woman, trying to understand and thinks very seriously for the social transformation in this context. I feel that that our entire pedagogy, that is the education system, right from the day one, is completely flawed. We have not taken any issue which are very problematic, let us say gender discrimination, or the discrimination of the weaker sections. And at the same time, for what is the purpose of our education is also not underlined in our syllabus ever. As a result, we all take education for having our own, let us say, job, or related to the job. So what I feel that we and you, a young generation, have a very important, let us say, technology at your disposal, that is mobile, and you can now, download PDF file, a direct, PDF file download from the books. So why don't you read books like which are created in 1960s, or written in 1960s by Paolo Freire, one who says that how critical pedagogy, questioning has to be there. If there is no questioning, the society doesn't proceed further. The Western civilization is consistently has a self-introspection, which we never do. Why did I take the education? We never have this question. What did I do while taking the education? Is it really relevant for me to take the education? That question we never raised to, never asked to oneself. So I feel, Rifat, that it is very crucial for us to read, and there is no need for your teacher. Now your teacher is your mobile, and for what purpose you're using, that matters a lot, friends. If you, young generation, decide something very concretely and read, and all these things, if you have something in your mind, you go to Google Scholar, you go to Stanford Encyclopedia of Social Sciences, right over there, and you have elaborate, structured, let us say, articulation written on that subject matter. So read quite a lot, but I must say that don't only read, but reflect, because reflection is very crucial, and specifically when you have the most problematic and complex society like India, we need to have massive reading, articulation, analyzing, and application. That is what the epistemology says, that you cannot only have the articulation, but how you're applying those articulations in your day-to-day life and for the policy, formulation, being in the governance. So I would say that you first read critical pedagogy, critical methodology, and try to understand what went wrong and how to articulate in modern days. Because young generation, if start doing this, I think in coming 10 years, you can have another India. And I believe in, let us say, very strongly in this.
Thank you, ma'am. We have another question. Sir, you talked about Hindu Code Bill. Why Hindu Code Bill was not taken? Just a second. Why Hindu Code Bill was not taken seriously by the upper caste leaders? Was it due to taking up onus by Baba Saheb, or they wanted to keep patriarchy intact, or it was something else? If we see the social religious reform movement of 19th century, most of the social problems related more to that of the upper caste elites than to the problems or questions of the lower caste women.
Thanks for this question. I think I would say that the second part is actually more true, wherein you are saying that it was due to take it was related to keeping the patriarchy intact, and also actually patriarchy was to be kept intact, but also I think it was seen that Dr. Ambedkar, coming from the untouchable background, how could he be talking about the kind of issues which are affecting the upper caste women, or the women in general, particularly because this was basically for the Hindu women. And when you say that why Hindu Code Bill was not taken seriously by upper caste leaders, it was obviously it was taken seriously, and that is why there was a lot of resistance, not only from those who were conservatives, but this was also equally true about those who were so-called liberals, those who thought themselves that, or they considered themselves to be progressive ones. They were also not actually ready to take this further. That is another thing. And when you are saying, if we see that social religious reform movement of 19th century, actually when you look at the 19th century, in the that's what Dr. Abhina Kamble has been talking about, that what we are being taught, that is very, very important, because some of the ideas, those have been put behind the curtain, those have not been taken into consideration. The religious 19th century movement, Phule were also there. Mahatma Phule and Savitribai Phule, they were also there. They were also talking about emancipation of the women, and they were not talking about only the women in general, but they were talking about the untouchable women. They were talking about untouchables as well. So, but you see that almost for 100 years or so, the contributions of Phule's have been completely sidelined, and it is only after the let's say Dalit Bahujans coming into the larger picture, then they bringing in these issues to the fore, and then the contributions of Phule's and others being acknowledged. So in this context, I would say that the Hindu code, yeah, I think that's all. Yeah. It's already, yeah, fine.
Another question we have for ma'am. It is a two-part question. Does she include, do you include Pashmanda class in Muslim community into the larger Dalit platform? And what is the specific region for ma'am's research? Because societal reforms in Hindu society, there are certain reforms like creation of Sabri temple and state role providing basic income necessities which are for economically backward family is essential for its growth in central UP, specifically coming from orthodox religious centers. And a general question for this is the first part of the question.
Okay, so I would say that yeah, Pasmanda is. I did read something on Pasmanda Muslims, those who are the Muslims deprived in the Muslim community. I get reminded of Baba Sahib's statement that unfortunately in this country, all religions got infected by the Hindu religion's untouchability. So whoever is deprived of something needs to come under the banner of I mean, having privileges for their survival. That is my point about this. I don't know what exactly the second part of this question, that's Sabri temple and state's role providing basic economy. Yes.
I'll read the second part, which is how is Ambedkar's just and undisputed points about our society important for an anthropological study as today, or India rather than important industrial empowerment is necessary at this point of time in post COVID-19 world, and how women's role going to shape this new world order?
I really don't have opinion about this new normal, which has been said last 1 year by all the academics and also researchers, that new normal. I would say that we already have some very abnormal, let us say, patterns and also aspects in the society. They are sidelined, and now we are talking about new normal and the new world order. Okay. I don't know whether the New World Order is about the neoliberal state, but I believe since it is about a COVID-19 world. Uh, uh, Undisputed point about our society is important for an anthropological study as today for India rather than important industrial empowerment is necessary. Now, I don't think that he has said that let us not go for. I think you are relating it to the Gandhian principle of indigenous technology and all other things. But I think he was the most modernist person, believed in all rational thinking. Joining the Buddhism as a philosophy of life was basically the philosophy of life, which was basically rational. Okay, so from that point of view, I can say that articulation which he does was highly modernist. And that's the reason he would have given more modernist understanding to the present pandemic situation. Yes.
Yes, Adishri. Questions are over.
Okay, I was not audible. I thought I was audible. Yeah. So we have another question for Sir. What was the mindset of those women who were agitating against Hindu Code Bill at India Gate?
Okay. See, I think the larger mindset might have been that our traditions, our culture, that is being questioned through the Hindu Code Bill, and you see. Whenever there have been some kind of progressive laws, then the victims themselves have been brought in such a way that as if the emancipatory mechanisms which are being introduced by the new laws or maybe by new initiatives, then there sometimes those who are the victims, they themselves are brought in by the ruling classes, as well as by the kind of mindset which has been cultivated over a period of time among those, and they themselves agitate. So I think that was the kind of mindset basically that was functioning for those women who were agitating against this Hindu Code Bill in front of India Gate. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. We have another question. Do you think, Abhinaya ma'am, to read the original work of Ambedkar should be mandatory?
Yeah, I would say it is very important because, sometimes some people, they interpret Ambedkar from their point of view. That should not be there. Since he has written all by himself and published by the Maharashtra government, you should always go for reading his original text, because text, but later on contextualize in a very outrightly, I would say, manipulative manner. So we should not go for that. First, as a student, you should read original text of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. That would be my suggestion. That's very important to know Ambedkar.
We have another question. Ma'am, may I know how far we can say that women have freedom to do anything? If it is so, then why we feel fear to do job at night? Why girls can tell about their sexual harassment and so on problem there is?
It's not only the person, that is a woman, but the society, the societal perception, customary practices, and a very crucial role of a state. State needs to take very, very important actions if something goes wrong. And since we are not taking that role, I mean, I'm talking about state as a structure. If state is not taking, then every offender, they feel that, okay, I can get away with this, I can do something like this, and that is a big issue with all of us. So I would get back to Mahatma Phule, that Jyotirao Phule, that he consistently said in 1848 that what this country requires, and he also said before the colonial rulers that what this country requires is education. There is no escape route to education, because if you have the education, each and everybody will have a responsible behavior. But I would also extend this argument that education needs to have that kind of responsibility, which we don't have. As a result, we also have white collar criminals. Those who are more educated, they are more well versed with how to hide themselves, and tax evading could be one of the illustration for this matter. As young people, I'm telling you. So what I'm trying to say, that the education system needs to be become a very, very, I will not say compulsory, since we are under the democratic system, but I would say that education has to be there for us to know what is going on in this country or about us. And as an individual, if you become, according to Foulevian concept of autonomous being, then it's not possible for us to get cheated. And especially for women and also small children, when they learn the gender sensitization, this pedagogy right from the day one, I don't think they will go against their fellow sisters. So I would say that education has to be there, and it should be made compulsory for people to understand what is happening and what exactly needs to be done in this country. So that is my aspect about sexual harassment. And borrowing something from West and adjusting over here will not help. You need to have that kind of inculcating those ideas in upbringing, in school, in the state system, and collectively we can create that awareness that how you need to give respect to a woman. We have a very double speak sort of ideology, that at one level we say that a woman is God, and I mean goddesses, but at the same time we disrespect to her at a very low level. Okay, so I think that needs to be stopped, and that will happen if you have education, and each and everybody. It's not only women, but children overall. That is, a boy and a girl both should have education, and in education you should have the incorporation of values to respect others. Okay, democracy and liberal values are not one track, let us say, process. It's basically complementary and made from both the sides for each other. It doesn't happen one way.
We have one request that, ma'am, would you please name the books you have suggested?
Shall I write over here in the chat box?
If you can.
Okay, no more question.
If you have any, no, sir.
Okay. Then.
There is one more question. It just came in. Ma'am, I asked, what is your specific Ma'am, I asked, what is your specific region of research?
Region, okay.
Pointed asked
Yes.
You pointed out that upper caste is today not with cause of Dalit empowerment. That's the question.
Okay, so which question I should take first? This one by someone called Mrityunjaya. Land states role or religious role in the UP suggested something different this time. Okay. I would say that let us say that I'm into this study and reading and also research of Dalit women for last 15 years. And it's not only Dalit women, but I'm trying to understand with the methodology of comparative analysis and specifically violence against Dalit women, systemic, structural, day-to-day, continuum, ongoing, okay, such violence, what is the relevance and how it impacts. It does not only impact the specific individual family, but it impacts on dehumanizing processes of the entire community. And in that, the culprit uh, develops the double standard to ignore if somebody is suffering on these accounts, and a victim develops that kind of a fear psychosis that anytime anything can happen. Okay, so what I would say that my area is basically political theory and into that feminist theory, uh, but with a very core knowledge, or let us say emphasizing on violence against Dalit women. Okay, so here, um, yes, what was the earlier question?
About will truth and reconciliation help in reducing the trauma?
Uh, Truth and reconciliation commissions are very, very successful at United Nations level. But here we don't have that culture and tradition of saying something truthfully that I have really committed harm. Okay, we do have a prominent religious impact on us, but as far as such a truthfulness about our wrongdoing towards another human being is justified under the name of a religion. And I feel that Truth and Reconciliation Commission became very successful in civil wars of Eastern Europe, Herzegovina, Bosnia, and Czechoslovakia, about the minority women of Bosnian women. But in case of, and also in civil rights of the African civil rights, let us say in 1990s onwards, what I'm trying to say that over here in this country, we never have this kind of a culture of saying openly that, yes, I'm a culprit and I need to take the penance. Okay, it never happens. As a result, truth and reconciliation will happen for only on that particular day, but eventually we will settle down in our traditional customary perception that, okay, I have every right to rob off other persons, let us say, freedom and liberty. And that loaded phenomena is so much that when you see boys are eve teasing, they never have that question that, do I really have to create disturbance to another individual? That is what Ambedkar Baba Sahib is insisting, that we need to have the inculcate those constitutional morality, that am I really responsible for some, I mean, how do I have right to make someone to disturb? Okay, when we don't have this gossiping, in this country is such a loaded concept that you keep on gossiping for no reason, and you don't have questioning that why I'm gossiping. Okay, so to inculcate those values are very, very crucial at this juncture, and each one of us should have that perception in our schooling, in our house upbringing, that one should not say anything bad about others. Though all religions they say like this, but actual performance of such patterns of behavior, now parents are taking place. Parents are not taking care of these things, and our uh, enlightened teachers or our children, when they become and read something, they don't reflect on those lines. I think that's a lacuna, and that is very, very disturbing. And caste, being a hierarchy, has massive locations and spaces for talking about others bad. Okay, and that creates extra trouble for an individual, one who is from that specific category. Okay, and that we need to stop somewhere. Our education should teach us. Okay.
I guess that is all from the questions part.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir, for conducting this very enriching and interactive discussions on Ambedkar Jayanti. We are deeply honored. I'm sure we are all going to take back so much more than the ideas we came with and a better understanding on the subject. Now I would Ajit sir to kindly deliver the word of thanks.
Thank you
very much, Adisri, for conducting so well the question answer session. So we have heard of IQ, intelligent quotient, then EQ, emotional quotient. And on this 138th birth anniversary of Baba Sahib Ambedkar, which he practically lived and faced, we have faced one problem in the beginning, which I called it as AQ, adverse quotient. So we were able to manage within no time, and so I am very much thankful to the technical team of our college, especially Ravinder Pant, and it was the idea floated by our principal sir that we can shift to Zoom. So so many thanks to our technical team led by Ravinder and other people. So and so adverse quotient is very much essential, and we should always learn from the ideas and sufferings which Baba Sahib went through in his lifetime. This is nothing in compared to what Baba Sahib went. So I can see a galaxy of intellectuals in the participant list, and I'm also thankful, besides the two speakers of the day, Professor Narendra Kumar and Dr. Avinay Ramesh Kamble ma'am, who took the initiative, and within no time they accepted our invitation, and it was really very wonderful to listen to both the speaker. So I am very thankful to both of you. And as I told you that in participants I can see Professor Y.S. Elone, and many of my other colleagues are there. So I am thankful to my colleagues from our college, from other colleges and universities, and the students. In the Google Meet, there were many, but they were not able to join in this Google. So I am also thankful to the students community who made this day successful, and the Ambedkar Study Circle office bearer. They are the core team who worked really very hard in planning and executing the today's program. So everybody is at home, but so beautifully Ansul, Rifat, and other Adishri and other people brought Kartike. So I may be forgetting few names, but they deserve the real applaud for bringing this e-magazine for the second year in continuation. And principal sir is always motivating us and me personally to take these responsibilities and to organize such webinar. And I'm very much thankful to our principal sir. He always encouraged us in taking up this academic activities and supported very well. So I'm also thankful to our principal sir. And thank you all. Jai Bhim.